Well, I know people are going to take away, first of all, exposure to four extraordinary artists, and four very different kinds of artists, and super engaging speakers, and people who, it's a thing to spend some time with people who have spent 20, 30 or more years considering what it means to tell a story and to represent a character, to draw a character. I find, I mean, that's what I do too. So I find nothing more thrilling. So I think people will take away the pleasure and enjoyment of that. I also, I hope people get their kind of own, kind of presumptions or perspectives challenged a little, and maybe get knocked, not destabilized massively or anything, but kind of go, oh, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. I think there's enough of a variety of perspectives on the panel that people will have will have things, will be exposed to thoughts they haven't had around questions that often get reduced, like appropriation is bad, or whatever, or you can only write about your own lived experience, or nobody should ever be censored ever. Those kind of hot button reductionist kind of things. I think people will feel nourished by the complexity that they witness in response to those. This conversation is extremely important to me because I think we're in a really interesting time in relationship to stories and what stories we tell and who tells those stories and what it means when different folks tell different kinds of stories. We're at a time where I would argue that quite quickly our kind of mass culture or mainstream culture is kind of recognizing that that stories have been told primarily in kind of dominant culture venues, or the big venues, primarily by certain folks who've had access to those venues. And often, in my view, those people telling those stories, through no fault of their own, have not really thought much about their responsibility or what it means to tell stories about experiences that may not be their own. And that's beginning to change. And I think that's a really exciting development. A kind of flip side, which is we're also in a period, fueled by social media, obviously, but other things too, in which storytellers, I think, are feeling fear about their imaginations and what their imaginations might be allowed or not allowed to tackle. And for me, one of the great pleasures of storytelling and of creating stories is actually imagining or learning about or investigating the experience of those who don't share my experience, whose experience I have not lived or don't have a direct experience of.